took my humanities class. Michelle, you are a light to all who are lucky enough to know you. We can't wait to see what your future holds. And watching you work through the creation of this show has been a joy and a privilege. So without further ado, on to the movie.
Scene 1, the nurse. Michelle's studio apartment. The kitchen is full of dirty dishes, opened and unfinished snacks, and partially dirty laundry are scattered all over the furniture. Just as scattered are the pictures that she has of all the people that she loves, both those who are by her side and those she wished could be with her on earth. Michelle walks in, fully covered in PPE that is used in her COVID unit at Spalding. She lugs a heavy backpack full of a spare change of comfortable clothes, an extra pair of scrubs, and too many snack wrappers. She takes off her work sneakers at the door. She strips herself of her PPE and scrubs. She puts her PPE in a black trash bag to throw away, and puts her sweat-stained uniform in a clear trash bag. She picks up the trash bag, along with an overflowing laundry basket in the living room, and walks over to the washer to do a load of laundry.
I was supposed to be a nurse. My dad is an IT nurse at Mass Gen. My mom is a nursing assistant at Spalding. Tito Ricky is in a hospital in New Jersey. Tito Joy and Tito Dick are getting their masters in nursing in Pangasinan. Gail wants to be a doctor, so I wanted to be a nurse. I grew up in the hospital, and not in the I was a really sick kid whose childhood was full of doctor visits way, thankfully, but my parents, being the protective Filipino parents that they are, didn't trust babysitters. It just wasn't their way. And there was no need for it in the Philippines because you had your village of a family to help raise your kids. It's not like they could have afforded it at the time anyway. But when my parents would alternate shifts at UVille, I waited in the break room. The break room was encased in these glass walls so you could see everything that happened inside and outside that room. I remember doodling in a small notebook and showing all the other nurses who were on break my drawings. I drew the nurses in their scrubs and the patients in their gowns and the flowers that would get delivered in the early mornings. I had my own village, health workers in scrubs ready to give me graham crackers and popsicles and admire my art.
Scene 2, the singer. Michelle takes her laundry out of the dryer and moves it to the living room to start folding it. She puts on her Spotify playlist. She continues to fold. After a little while, she skips the song and Alone by Heart starts playing. She begins to laugh.
My mom got to spend her birthday with her siblings back home for the first time in a very long time last summer. And my aunts and uncles made the mistake of getting her a karaoke machine. We used to have one when I was little, and my parents would sing the same 10 songs, so it didn't take long for me to know them by heart. 100 Years by Five for Fighting, Aubrey by Bread, Can't Cry Hard Enough by the Williams Brothers. And after every song, it would give you a grade of how well you sang. My family always competed to get hundreds. The morning after my mom flew back to Boston at 6 a.m. sharp, I woke up to this song blasting from the living room. I was used to waking up to church music on Saturday morning while she cleaned the house, so it was different to hear this song before the sun was down. You would have never known that she had landed just a couple hours before. Traveling for over 40 hours did not stop her from putting on the show. She got a 97.
Michelle sings along to the song, grabbing anything near her as a microphone. She serenades and performs in the room as if she's holding her own concert, just like her mom would. After the song ends, or she can't just sing any longer, Michelle calms down and continues to fold her laundry.
When I transferred to Walnut High, my sophomore year of high school, and joined play pro and choir, I started questioning if being a nurse was what I wanted. I sang my whole life. Both of my parents sang in the church. In fact, that's how they met. So by default, I grew up singing at church. My first show was Godspell. It was a good first show for my church family to come watch. I sang Day by Day. I had a flower in my hair and a purple polka dot top that showed my shoulders, which seemed a bit scandalous at the time, but I guess that's what public schools go for. You can still find a bootleg of me singing the song if you dig deep enough into my church's Facebook page. There may not be a challenge. But being on stage, performing that song for hundreds of people sparked my love for acting. This made things really hard for me senior year when I had to apply for colleges. Did I want to be an RN or an actress? Did I want to be in the hospital or on stage? Did I want to follow my father's footsteps or pave my own path? Well, of the 7 schools that I applied for, all of them were for nursing, and all of them were near Boston, except for one, Center. I applied after being nominated for Posse, and after several months of interviews, I got an email saying that I qualified for the final round. I remember reading in my car while waiting to pick up my brothers from karate. I called my mom and took screenshots of her crying on FaceTime. She was really happy for me. My parents and I went to a meeting at Faneuil Hall that talked about the final process and brought alumni in to talk about their experiences. At the end of the meeting, we had the option to confirm our spot in the final round right away. Excited, I turned to my parents so that we could sign the papers. And I was met with silence. My dad motioned me towards him and simply told me we were going home. Shocked, confused, and a little angry, I walked towards them and cried. I cried on the train ride home, cried at the restaurant we went to for dinner, and cried for 3 days straight in my room. I didn't go to school, I didn't talk to my family, I just cried and cried and cried. I didn't understand why they didn't let me take it. Over 3,000 students applied to get this, and I scored one of the 20 spots in the finals. How could they not be happy for me? We fought a lot during this time. I kept reminding them it was a full tuition scholarship. They kept reminding me that it was too far away from home. They said I was running away from and abandoning my family. It even got to the point where they were going to let me go to acting school in Boston and not force me to come home every weekend. I didn't even have to talk to them again. I just had to stay close to home. It took a very long and emotional family meeting, but eventually I convinced them to let me confirm my spot in the finals. It may or may not have consisted of me promising to do the pre-nursing track, which I clearly didn't follow through with. But when I did get the call that I won the scholarship while we were at a restaurant eating pho, I was met with silence again. A sad smile from both of my parents. The same bittersweet grin they gave me when they finished moving me into my dorm at Center that August.
Scene 4, The Immigrant. Michelle walks to the kitchen sink to wash her hands. She then goes into the kitchen to make some food. She didn't have time for a dinner break during her 12-hour shift. The fridge is littered with ingredients and Tupperwares of takeout and leftovers. Some from her family, some she cooked on her own.
Even though I was only 3 when I left the Philippines, I had an understanding that it was a big deal. I wasn't the biggest fan of leaving because I missed playing in the streets with my cousins and chasing after the man that sold the ho every morning and being such a short walk away from the ocean. But I knew that it was a big decision for my parents to make. Over the summer, I asked my mom how she told her mom that she was moving to the other side of the world. She said that Lola was happy for her and encouraged her. I knew my mom was already in her early 30s by then and had a husband and child of her own. But leaving your family behind, especially your mother, was never easy. My mom's parents never got to visit us in Boston. She told me how, when she was younger, she had an uncle who immigrated to the U.S. and never ended up bringing his parents with him, even just to visit. She remembered shaming me for that. only for her to do the same exact thing a couple of years later. When my Lola died, Ma asked if Lola wanted to come with them too. If he wanted to stay with her in Boston, either just to visit. He's 78 now, and will probably never get to see what my mom got here. I don't know if he declined the offer out of spite or out of wishing my Lola could go with him too.
Along with the leftovers she was going to eat, Michelle takes out 2 pieces of parmesan. She toasts both of them and spreads butter on each side. She walks over to her makeshift ofrenda, similar to the one her and her roommates made in their apartment senior year of college. A beautiful framed picture of her Lola, the same picture that was displayed at the funeral she didn't get to attend. It is surrounded by tea lights, flowers, and one of the toasted pieces of parmesan with butter. She eats her piece of parmesan as she straightens out and cleans the ofrenda. Scene 5, the granddaughter. Michelle picks up the picture frame and studies it. She can't help but smile at the beauty of her Lola, the same beauty she sees in her mom and the beauty Michelle only hopes to exude.
Mom was right. She does look like Lola. A couple of days before my Lola passed, we had just come back from our Canada trip. Mom came into my room to wake me up. Even Bob was out of bed, which was unusual. She was on the phone with her siblings and said that Lola was in the hospital. And I started crying. I could feel Ma's heart drop in my own chest. Lola had been to the hospital before, but this time was different. They said that she was going to die in the next couple of days. So my dad and I scrambled to find a ticket to get her home in time. I was supposed to go with my mom. I wanted to be her backbone while the world was falling apart. But tickets were thousands of dollars that my parents needed to pay for funeral and hospital expenses, so I didn't go. Do I regret it? Maybe. Do I wish I just put all my savings into that damn ticket? Sometimes. But I stayed, and I put my head down and worked to send money to my mom to take care of her family. The day Lola died, I came home after spending the day with Jared. I didn't want to be at the house. Selfish for leaving my mom, but I couldn't stay. I couldn't look at my mom without feeling guilt. The moment I walked into the house that night, I knew that something was wrong. Mom was on the couch on a video call. I don't remember if she was trying not to cry or already crying. I do remember the breaking point though. They brought the camera to my Lola laying on the hospital bed. Ma just wanted to see her. Tita Beng was weeping into Lola's lap, begging for her to come back. It didn't matter that she had spent the last couple of decades taking care of her every day. She would rather spend every day serving her if it meant that she would stay. I'll never forget what my mom said. "Wait for me, Ma," she pleaded. "I'll be home soon." And when I looked at her, I didn't see my mom. I saw a little girl crying for her mother. To me, it felt like the world cracked my chest open and took a part of my heart. Maybe it was seeing the vulnerability of my mom. Maybe it was knowing a part of my maternal line was gone. But I know a part of me died the day she died.
Michelle takes out a small cupcake. She puts a candle in the frosting and takes the lighter out to light the candle. She pulls her phone out to play a video. It's her Lola and Lolo greeting her for her 18th birthday a couple of years ago. She replays it over and over again before blowing the candle out. If she needs a moment to breathe, she does. Scene 6, the prayer. Michelle takes the rosary and places it next to her Lola's portrait. She's never prayed using a rosary. She learned about it at Chevres and how every bead meant a different prayer. She felt like it was a bit redundant. She was Methodist anyway, not Catholic. But something draws her to it tonight. Maybe it was the exhaustion from the long shift or the guilt from not thinking about her late Lola in a while. She picks up the rosary and closes her eyes and prays.
Patawad sa mga panahon, ako ay naging mabigat. Lalo na sa mga panahon, tayo ay sala. Natuto na ako sa aking mga pagkakamali. Dahil sa isang tulad mo na walang sinasayang na sandali.
Michelle is struggling to remember the words, get the pronunciation right. She hesitates when the voices of her family slowly join her in the prayer. The sound comforts her and encourages her to keep going. There are moments where she is overwhelmed, but hearing her family holds her together even when she feels like falling apart.
O aking ina, salamat sa pagiging ilaw ng tadhana. Na kahit mahirap ang aking kalagayan, nagsisikap ka pa rin para ang mga problema ay malamhasan. Salamat, salamat, salamat. Biyaya ka ng Panginoon mula sa aking pagmulat. Hindi ko sasayangin ang lahat ng iyong paghihirap. Para sa ikabuti ng aking hinaharap.
Scene 7, the unit service aide. Michelle walks over to the sink to recollect herself. She washes her face with cool water and takes her time to do her face routine. When she's finished, she begins to do her makeup.
Dying is weird. I couldn't tell you how my dad goes to work every day knowing death is all around him. I always joke that one thing on my acting bucket list was to get casted on as a nurse on some medical drama, and how seeing me in scrubs would finally make my parents proud. But my sophomore year of college, in the middle of the pandemic, I chose to work in the same hospital that hired my parents when we first immigrated to Boston. I was known as Michael and Marlene's daughter. The nurses and CNAs on my floor wouldn't stop coming up to me my first couple of days to talk about how they remember me when I was little. It kind of annoyed me at first, but after seeing how admired my parents were, I wore the title with pride. Since the people working on my floor loved my parents, they brought me in as one of their own, and definitely taught me things that I should not have been allowed to do. I learned how to adjust patients that were bedridden to prevent sores, change their dressings, and even how to properly lift patients to assist them in the bathroom. Definitely not where I thought I would be at 19. I got to know a lot of the patients pretty well and became particularly close with a few of them. Spalding is a rehab facility, so all the patients were there long term, at least a couple of months. Accidents, chronic illnesses, general health problems that come with aging. I saw a lot of people struggle. I didn't take my first step there very well. I came to work one day and saw a picture of a beautiful flower taped at a patient's door. I didn't think to ask about it, since it seemed like a sweet gesture at the time. But then my mom came to visit me while she was also working a shift and told me that the patient was transferred to hospice care. The nurses were only treating him to make sure he was comfortable before he passed later that day. His family had to say goodbye to him over video call. It was my mom's job at the time to schedule and carry out these calls. Spalding still wasn't allowing families to visit, even to say goodbye to their loved ones. I closed my eyes. I could still hear his grandchildren crying on the iPad.
Scene 8, the daughter.
My mom was usually on the floor with the other CNAs, attending patients whenever they were ready for help. Early into the pandemic, she was helping a patient get into the crane that would lift them out of bed and injure her shoulder. After Pa almost died from too many overnight shifts, you'd think she'd know better than to push herself. This was one of the first moments when I realized that Ma wasn't invincible. Ever since we were little, my brothers and I knew that she could do everything. Cook, clean, drive, sing, cheer, laugh, pack only hours before we left for a family vacation, which I inherited from her. And well, scold. I kind of deserved it after sneaking out of the house so many times. She didn't give up on me, even though she didn't always understand. She didn't know why I had to use complicated English words that she didn't know the exact meaning of. She didn't know why I hated taking morning showers, even though she swore I'd be prone to migraines. She didn't know why I had to move 1,000 miles away to be happy. If only she knew what I knew. If only she knew that there weren't enough words in either languages to reassure her that I'm not ashamed of her. How maybe she was right, and now I have to blow dry my hair before I go to bed after taking a night shower. And how I needed the distance to figure out how to make sure our relationship didn't follow her.
Scene 9, the griever. Michelle changes into a plain black dress and black heels.
I didn't know my Lola. You wouldn't think a generation between us would separate us enough to be strangers. I knew that she was my mom's mom. I knew she was 10 years older than my Lola. It took me a couple of years to remember, but I could eventually tell you that her name was Consuelo without having to confirm with my mom. But I didn't know her, you know. I saw Mama ask her questions about how she was feeling, what day it was, whether she recognized her own daughter or not, almost like testing a little kid to make sure they knew what to say if they got lost. Sometimes she was able to recognize me, sometimes by name, sometimes by just knowing that I was my mother's daughter. I didn't see my Lola very much, but the day she died, I saw her in the hospital bed on FaceTime. And she looked so tiny, like she was shriveling up and the earth was taking her back, taking her away from all of us who needed her, wanting her more. She looked weak, frail almost. But I knew she was far from it when she was alive. I didn't have to hear any stories to feel in my bones that she passed some of her strength down to my mom and then down to me. Because I didn't know her, I didn't feel like I had the right to grieve her. She was my grandmother, yes, but I didn't know her favorite food, what music she liked, how she raised my mother and her siblings. But my body knew she was a part of me, and that piece of me was now gone. I truly believe that when people pass, they visit you in their dreams. There have been several times when someone I knew that passed away, not even someone who I deeply loved or was close with, visited me in my dreams. I always thought of it as them saying goodbye. Since her passing, my mom tells me Lola visits her in her dreams. She tells me how Lola hugs her really tight, or how they talk as if nothing happened. A part of me is really happy that she's able to reunite with her. But a part of my heart hurts, knowing that she hasn't visited me yet. Did she die remembering my name? Does she know how much my heart aches? Does she realize that she has a granddaughter on the other side of the world, grieving for a relationship she will now never get to have?
Scene 10. Young Delago, Filipino.
I always wondered how different I would be if I never immigrated to the United States. I definitely would have had more siblings, according to my mom. I probably would have been a nurse, fighting to be at the top of my class, and attending UPA, Papa's alma mater. I would have had my name with my degree, on a metal sign hanging on the side of our family house. Michelle V. Chan, RN BSN. Maybe I wouldn't have gone through the heartbreak of not knowing where I belong. I could walk around knowing that everyone looked like me and spoke the same language as me without having to go to a Jollibee. I wouldn't have to go to restaurants and wish I had a side of rice to go with my food. I wouldn't have to be jealous of how my cousins could freely laugh and hug my Lola and Lola while I had to stand on the other side of the room in awkward silence. I would lie if I said I didn't feel robbed of a simpler life on the other side of the world. Maybe I would be happier. Maybe my skin would be browner. Maybe my family would be prouder. But maybe I wouldn't have had the chance to speak louder.
Scene 11. The actress.
Is it a fair trade? I don't know if I'd call it that. My parents are definitely still questioning whether letting me do this whole acting thing was the right choice. I called them after I booked this commercial gig, my first paid acting gig, and they laughed. Not really in a condescending way, thankfully, more surprised, but sprinkled a little bit of excitement. They've seen me on stage as Robin, and Hecuba, and Agnes, and Anna, and Carmen. Acting resume available upon request. Maybe they'll eventually see me as an actress in the same way they marveled over teleserie stars on the Filipino channel we watched when I was a kid. But honestly, I hope in the end they just see me. And what I dream of, and what I pray for, and what I have to offer to the world, thanks to their love and the support of every single person who's held my hand on these crazy adventures. I hope they see me as one of their accomplishments that they never got to show their family and friends in Pangasinan. For all the birthdays, Christmases, weddings, baptisms, and funerals they miss, I hope they see me on stage, on the big screen, or on their living room couch as their shell, their little girl that they let have a dream.
Scene 12. The Dreamer.
You ready, Mama?
klase ko na naman. So, pag-policy, and pag-policy.
The end for now.
Any other moments that anyone wants to call out?
To me, I had to listen.
That's okay.
When she first started talking about her grandma and the emotional, that's my heart. And also when you were describing the first time that you saw Beth in the hospital and you heard the video call, I almost lost my mother during the pandemic to COVID, so I was really excited to come all the times.
The prayer that you made, even though I didn't understand what you were saying, it was very interesting because I still knew what you were saying. Because, language is powerful.
Nice little break before the prayer. She's not even Catholic.
I also love how Michelle added her funniness with so much pain, because that just screams her. It's hard to imagine, it's like, I'm gonna put this joke in because I'm not crying.
That's so human, isn't it? It's so human. We're never just one thing. Any others? I see somebody pointing at someone.
You started talking about wishing you had more of a relationship with your grandma as hashtag relatables for a lot too.
When you pointed out that you had this moment where you realized you were really invincible, and that's something everyone has a moment, and you have to sort of reconcile that, it's really resonating.
Going off what you were saying, this expression of like grandmother going back to earth, and kind of like a cycle. Yeah, it was really beautiful and heartbreaking.
I think it was like everything. In a way. But I found it really powerful when she said, I didn't even know my grandma, but I can remember her name, like, I know what her name was. I don't remember the exact phrase, but that was like really powerful. It's like, you get to connect with your passing away or your ancestors. You didn't know who they are, like they are still a big part of yourself. And also the moments where she was like, wondering about her identity and herself and how different her life would be. She's like my way to realize. I think like that's sentiment that like what infants have in a way. It's like it was like very powerful. I think every single scene it was like very relatable in many ways.
I also really love the end, how you pull it back full circle and bring it to the now. Like that is so powerful.
Sorry, I don't want to talk about when she was talking about Foxy and about how mad her parents were. Because I experienced the same exact thing. My dad in particular was not a happy camper. And I felt that like kind of like what she was describing as parents that were very proud of their kid, but also weren't ready to let their child have the best. And yeah. That's perfect.
I'm so, this isn't a super moment, but so impressed with your ability to be so vulnerable and open and humorous with all of this. Because I think, it's so easy, well, it's not easy. But it's easier to be vulnerable on stage when you're being someone else, and it's so hard to be yourself, which I actually think is a quote from the third High School Musical, but that's a whole other But I mean, it's true. So being able to not only, like, obviously having the privilege of having acted across from you a few times now, like knowing how strong of a performer you are, and then being able to bring that same power to something that is uniquely yours, and being vulnerable in front of a group full of people, and making the rest of us cry in the process is just really astounding.
I'm just glad you had food for making me cry.
Emotions about it.
Great. Well, I'd like to know, does Michelle have any questions that you want to know from your audience?
Oh my gosh, after all that. This is it's only about 30 minutes so far. I do want to eventually develop it into a full-length play. I think if there's any curiosities that you have about my life, about my struggles, just something that you think I could like dig deep into more, I guess. Yeah.
We want more, So I get bragging rights because I went to high school this year. I saw her cry for the first time. I was like, oh my god, my section.
Oh my gosh.
But I think that kind of like just discovering yourself as like an actress could be something that would be interesting to explore a little bit. Just kind of like what were those multiple switches that kind of make you think, oh wait, maybe not.
Yeah. Thank you.
You shot boyfriends in there. Like, I mean, like. I don't know. It's like, well, I don't know. Just French came about you. To be honest, that's more you. But in general, okay, that was a joke.
Come on, theater kid, you got this.
Okay, but I physical representation of your wants or your desires or what.
Thank you, Glenn.
Any other things that you're sort of wanting to hear more about, dig a little deeper into?
I think maybe something that you are still exploring, like maybe later. But maybe it's in talking a little bit more about your identity as a Filipino woman, especially because you are very society, like your family, or you have feeling like all that, and like maybe trying to see, like I don't know, not be a person, but I don't know, like maybe trying to learn a little bit more about your Filipino identity and how you understand it.
I think it'd be interesting to hear about, you're in Danville, Kentucky right now. And I need to know, you're leaving soon. But I think it's a big part of it. I think it was 4 years of your life spent here. I think interesting how, this Boston girl lived here in Kentucky, and how that changed you and how you found yourself here. I don't know, but even more.
I guess one that I would say is basically the struggles of being a Filipino American, like being part of two communities, and whether you feel like at some points you don't you're not accepted being as a Filipino, being American, kind of trying to fit in, I guess.
I think it would be super fun to have a scene showing one of those times we snuck out. So, a Filipino party scene, I think would go so far.
Oh my gosh.
Any other questions for Ryan?
That's all I got.
Well, and are there any questions from the audience? Whether it's, we're not really looking at this point for opinions about, you should have done this, or why didn't you do this? But just sort of, if there's some general questions that you are curious about, whether it's the process or the story or the details, yeah.
Could you tell us more about maybe how long it took you to write this, maybe when it first came to your mind? I know it's probably the program, but I'd like to know the process.
Yeah, so I had this first idea last year, over a year ago now. I don't know if some of you went, but Dipti came in and did a beautiful one-woman show about her experience as a Indian American woman and finding herself and losing herself, trying to assimilate into the American culture. And I think for me, seeing her, seeing someone who looked like me, seeing someone who experienced literally what I have gone through in my life, and to see that, I say it in the program, but I did know that representation was important, but to have an experience so close to that one, I was bawling my eyes out in the audience. And then she also had a talk back, and after her talk back, I got to talk to her. I was sobbing in her arms. I was oh my gosh, it's so cool to see another proud Asian woman just on stage, just letting it all out after essentially keeping it in all these years. And I specifically told her, not only did I see myself in her, but I saw my mother in her on stage, and it made me wonder what my mom would have been able to say if she had the opportunity to tell her story. And then Dipti responded to me, have you ever thought of writing your own story? And I was no, I'm not a writer. But it was just in the back of my head for the longest time. I talked to so many people about writing it, and I just did not write it until January or February this year. I was so scared to even put the on the page. It was too much. But after getting the support of Frederick and everyone else around me, I'm just getting words on paper, just getting whatever's stuck in my silly little mind onto the screen or the paper. That's how it eventually came to what it is right now, and hopefully will continue to become.
Any other questions?
So process-wise, where did you sort of start, and did you move chronologically? Did you sort of bounce around?
Okay, Dr. Frederick. Well, we were in Greece. I think after we all left already, and I was with my mom, and I was you know what, I really need to get started on this. What's on my mind? And I think the first scene that I actually wrote, and I didn't change very much of was a scene about, I think I titled it The Day She Died, and I talked about the day that it happened, and I just started spitballing everything that happened, and then after I went through like the whole day or the whole couple of days, I just started reflecting on like how I've come to terms with it, or trying to come to terms with it to this day, because I think my grandmother passed away over the summer around July, so writing about it like in January or February, like giving it a couple months to really like marinate inside of me. Like I remember I was like typing and I was crying and I was typing, but yeah, I started off with that, and I maybe did like another just journal entry essentially that came to my mind, and then that was the first two things I said to Dr. Margaret, and he was like, you know what, like just keep journaling. I just kept journaling for like weeks and weeks on end, didn't know what I was doing. Like I didn't make it into like a play format until like a couple of weeks ago, so but yeah, my process was very unconventional, but it worked, so. Yeah, whoa!
She thought you might do the whole thing about reading. Like you were really processing, showing reading for a while, and then started thinking, oh no, there's other parts of it. I think his nurse was
Oh yeah, the nurse, yeah.
and that was about it.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you mentioned grief. Sorry, what was it again?
Dr. Margaret.
Okay. Yeah. I like the fact that you mentioned grief because you can grieve in so many ways. You can. It's not just that it can be moving. Like I feel like my freshman year, my fall semester, like that was tough on me. Especially, actually no, all of the semesters. So it's like sometimes I still feel guilty for being here. Sometimes like I could be home with my family. Sometimes like I can. There's so many great schools in Boston. Or I don't know, like grieving not being able to go back home, grieving not being able to do this, that, and the other. Like there's so many components to grief that like I feel like sometimes creative writing, as you say, like it can be a form of healing, and I'm glad that you chose that route.
So I know you said that you're still obviously working on this, which I'm so glad you are. But is there any moment that comes to mind that you're really anticipating adding to your story next?
Oh, well, that's coming up in timeline. I think I would have touched on it a little bit of just like finding myself in my Filipino American identity of, I think if I've ranted to anyone about how much I used to hate history class, like you know this story, but I used to hate history class because we'd talk about the same stories over and over again. Like I don't think I realized Filipino people were here before my family until I was in high school, which is crazy. They were here since like the 16th century. It's insane. But I never realized I liked history until like I got to college and I started looking into like Asian American history and BIPOC history and seeing people who looked like me and looked like my friends way back when. I'm like, whoa, why am I like, I was watching documentary after documentary and like reading things. I was like, oh my gosh. But I think as I start to learn more about what pre-colonial Philippines was like and sort of that also grief of what that could have become, I think a lot of people my age in the Philippines right now are talking about decolonizing themselves and decolonizing the culture. I don't like the president right now, but he did say that he wanted to change the Philippines, the name of the country, back to what it was before we were colonized by the Spaniards. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. So just, I guess, exploring into that and how, like, I'm slowly coming to terms of what I want to live through and live by and what I eventually want to pass down to, like, people that I know, my chosen family, and if I end up starting a family and stuff. Yeah.
We have time for one or two more questions. We have two more questions.
So I also mentioned how playing a character is its own vulnerability, playing yourself is something else. How did that feel? How did you approach that?
Oh gosh. I did not start reading this play aloud till like maybe 2 weeks ago. Because I would be typing and I'd be tearing up and I was like, Michelle, what are you going to do in 2 weeks? Like, it was really bad. Like, I'd go to a meeting with Dr. Frederick with tears in my eyes. Like, we weren't even like talking about the play, but I'd think about it and I'd be like, oh. But honestly, as like difficult as think that really allowed me to just kind of let go. And like Ashley said, like writing this story was part of my healing process and me processing like losing my grandmother and all of that. So I think it just as hard as it is, it just encourages me to just keep progressing in whatever journey this ends up being. Yeah.
I just think like in general, like I know you're talking about making this like a longer play, longer piece. I guess in general, what are your hopes like for the future of this piece, and like what would be like no barriers, like at
No
all?
barriers, don't say that to me. Tour, everyone's coming on to us. But it would really be cool to like, I'll stop, enough. But my friends who are back home in Boston and who might move to Boston have been talking about how like theater of like, BIPOC people leading theater would be so cool if we brought it back home. Like This Girl Laughs, This Girl Cries, This Girl Does Nothing was originally done in Spanish. And in our silly little brains, we were like, what if we brought the script in Spanish to the predominantly Spanish-speaking communities in Boston, and how, like I always said, her family would understand the play and would understand something that she would be involved in, and I think that's incredibly powerful. So like maybe bringing this story or bringing this process to other people, other communities, especially the youth, to like just kind of use it as a tool to like find themselves or